I never considered myself a storyteller, and certainly never expected to be writing something like this. But here I am, well past midnight, a glass of whiskey by my side, and a dull ache hollowing out my chest. I'm James, 34 years old, a construction guy through and through. I dropped out of community college because it felt like a waste of time, but I threw myself into work, hustling day in and day out. Over the years, I grew my one-man operation, just me, a beat-up pickup truck, and a few battered tools, into a proper business. I now have 5 crews running jobs around the county, and while I'm not rolling in billions, I do well enough to pay a mortgage on a home I renovated myself and enjoy a few comforts. At least that's the picture of success I used to believe in. For 7 years, I was married to Alexandra, who, on paper, was the perfect partner. She's 32, with dark hair she wears in a clipped-back style during the work week, and loose waves on weekends. She used to be bright and ambitious, the type who graduated top of her class at law school. I helped her get there, paid her tuition, covered our rent, took extra jobs so she wouldn't worry about student loans. It was a partnership, or so I thought. My reward? Hearing her plan in secret to divorce me, take half of everything, and ride into the sunset with another man. That discovery shattered my world like a wrecking ball. And it all began on the day of our annual spring dinner, a tradition she insisted on to show off the house to her family. Looking back, I can see the irony. That Saturday morning, I was up at 6, lighting up the smoker for a brisket I'd been carefully dry aging all week. The yard needed prepping. I used a power washer on the deck to give it that fresh, clean look. Alexandra was tense, biting my head off over the smallest things. She snapped at me for leaving boots by the front door, barked orders to rearrange the living room. I brushed it off as typical family dinner stress. Her parents, Elijah and Pamela, had never exactly approved of me, a blue-collar dropout. Her older brother Thomas, armed with a shiny business degree, was always subtly implying that my success was an accident or something precarious that could collapse if I made the wrong move. Her younger sister Magnolia was the only one who seemed halfway decent. She was quieter, still in grad school for something or other, and she rarely joined the family in verbally poking me. Everyone showed up around 4. We were set to eat around 6, but realized we'd need 2 more chairs from the garage. I stepped out through the side door, and that's when I heard it. Her brother's voice, carrying around the corner, drifting through the open window. He said, "I still can't believe you married this loser. Dad's right, you need to divorce him before you have kids and get stuck forever." Alexandra's response froze me in my tracks. She said, "I'm already working on it. My lawyer says we can take half his business, too." The words sounded so casual, so matter-of-fact, like she was discussing how to carve the brisket or choosing the next Netflix series to binge. They laughed about how clueless I was, cracked jokes about my so-called little construction game, and how the man she really wanted was named Dominic. My chest felt tight, like a steel band cinching around my lungs. I tried to breathe, but all I could manage were shallow, ragged gasps. I forced myself to quietly grab the chairs, press them against my side, and step back inside without making a sound. I took a quick glance at the hallway mirror. I looked normal. Totally normal, except inside, entire city blocks were crumbling. How long had she been plotting this? Despite the emotional Armageddon in my mind, I plastered on a polite smile and hosted dinner. I poured wine, sliced into the brisket, listened politely while Elijah inquired about my softening construction market, obviously hoping for me to admit some sign of failure. My wife, my traitorous wife, sat across from me, feigning normalcy. Her mother, Pamela, critiqued every detail of the house. The furniture arrangement was odd. The paint color in the dining room was a touch-off trend. All of that was standard for her. But the real stinger was seeing Alexandra's face, how she looked right through me. How had I ever missed the scorn in her eyes? Magnolia caught my eye at one point, giving me a questioning glance. I wondered if she suspected something. Maybe she'd seen the tension in my forced grin. But I just nodded and carried on like the perfect host, ignoring the nuclear meltdown happening in my gut. When the family finally left, Alexandra hummed happily, cleaning up the kitchen. She did everything so casually, even complimenting me on the meal. "Thanks, babe," she said, that plastic smile never faltering. "You're such a good husband." I almost vomited, but I held it in, telling her I'd do the dishes and she could go to bed. As soon as I heard the bedroom door click shut, I snuck into the home office and tried logging into her laptop. She'd changed the password, but I'd known her for 7 years. She had predictable patterns. On my third guess, I was in. I found exactly what I feared and more. Months of emails with her lawyer, spreadsheets detailing my business assets, and a timetable for filing the divorce right after she secured a partnership at her law firm. She'd even begun siphoning money from our joint account, small amounts just under the threshold for bank notifications, and depositing it into a secret account. My jaw tightened as I scrolled. Over $20,000 gone. That was money earmarked for a business expansion we'd discussed. She was literally draining me. My heart hammered as I dug deeper. A contact labeled simply D popped up repeatedly. I clicked into the messages. Dominic. They went back 6 months. Some of them were explicit, detailing things they'd done in hotels around the city or even in the back of his car. I felt my stomach twist. Each line I read hammered home the truth. My wife had been having a full-blown affair, using me as a placeholder until her career was set. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, a Monday, I phoned in sick to my own business, something I never do, just so I could meet with a divorce attorney. My buddy recommended a guy named Mike, who was brutally honest. According to him, if Alexandra filed first, she could stake a claim to half my business. She hadn't done squat to help build it, but the law often sees marital assets as shared. She'd likely succeed in taking a huge chunk. I spent the rest of that day oscillating between a sick, sinking feeling and cold, calculating fury. My wife, no, this stranger wanted to gut me financially. Fine, I'd show her exactly how I handle being double-crossed. That night, she pulled her sweet act again, bringing me soup, saying I looked pale. She even said, "I love you, James," with seemingly genuine concern. I smiled weakly and lied right back. "I love you too." Meanwhile, inside, I was blueprinting her downfall like I'd blueprint a construction project. I had a new objective now: protect myself at all costs. I started by calling my accountant, Frank, for an emergency meeting. I suspected Alexandra might try to manipulate my business books, and sure enough, Frank was already wary. Alexandra had contacted him recently, asking innocent questions about valuations and procedures. From Frank's perspective, she'd done just enough to set up a suspicious paper trail. Minor discrepancies that, if unearthed, would paint me as either incompetent or malicious in handling funds. None of it was illegal, but it could drag out a divorce with endless forensic accounting. We spent hours cleaning up every record, paying off outstanding equipment loans, documenting that Alexandra had no official role in the company's day-to-day. By the time we were done, my head pounded. But I felt a surge of grim satisfaction. She wanted to bury me with shady paper trails? Well, I'd just cleared them up. I then swung by the bank. Another hunch paid off. She'd applied for a home equity line of credit on our house, which was technically in both our names, but primarily paid for by me with pre-marriage savings. If that HELOC went through, she'd have quick access to $200,000, saddling me with half the debt. I canceled it on the spot. When I got home, I took an even more questionable step: bugging our house. In my state, it was legal for me to record in my own residence, but it still felt dirty. I planted small devices in the living room and our bedroom, plus a discreet camera in the home office. Desperate times, desperate measures. That very night, I heard her taking a hushed call with Dominic. She told him to be patient, that I didn't suspect a thing, and that I was still clueless enough to eat up her concerned wife routine. My fist clenched so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to burst in, scream, throw her out, but rage is seldom wise if you want the upper hand. So I let her finish. Let her think I was as dense as her father always implied. The next morning, I accidentally left blank divorce papers on my nightstand. She must have noticed because when I came back from the shower, they'd shifted, but she didn't say a word. I headed to work and continued making phone calls. Through business contacts, I dug up information about Dominic. He was a wealthy friend of Thomas, my brother-in-law. It turned out Dominic had been at a few family events I'd missed because I was too busy working. The puzzle pieces fit too well, like a hideous jigsaw of betrayal. She'd apparently reconnected with him in some official capacity and resumed their old college fling. It was a long game. This wasn't a drunken one-night stand. It was months of careful, methodical planning. That night, she tried to seduce me for the first time in ages. I recognized it for what it was, a ploy to keep me off balance. Still, I played along with her little charade, giving her the performance she expected. Afterward, in the darkness, I stared at the bedroom ceiling fan, counting rotations while she slept, trying not to let the hate in my gut devour me whole. On Thursday, I had coffee with Magnolia. She'd texted, asking to talk. Nervous, she picked at her muffin and tried to make small talk before finally telling me everything she knew. She had caught Alexandra and Dominic at a family lake house while I'd been dealing with an emergency job site flood. She confronted Alexandra, who brushed it off, claiming it was just a one-time thing. Later, when Magnolia got Alexandra drunk, she admitted the entire scheme. She planned to finalize everything after making partner, grabbing half my business assets in the divorce. Magnolia was horrified, but too scared to go against her overbearing family. She confessed she needed to clear her conscience. At least one member of that clan had a soul, apparently. I thanked her, promised not to mention her involvement, and left feeling oddly lighter. The doubts I had, the flickering thought that maybe I was imagining or exaggerating, vanished. My wife really was that cold. I decided to set the trap. On Friday, I created a fake business emergency and told Alexandra I needed her whole family's advice, maybe even Thomas's oh-so-valuable business insights. I played the helpless husband, worried about losing my biggest client. She hesitated, said she already had dinner plans, but I made my voice crack, practically begging. Hook, line, and sinker, she agreed. All day Friday, I prepared like I was building scaffolding for the biggest job of my career. I loaded every damning screenshot, bank record, and secret account detail onto a tablet. I also printed them out, just to have a paper trail. I grabbed her favorite cake from a bakery across town. Why not add some sweet irony to the night? Sure enough, that evening, her parents, Thomas, his wife, Magnolia, and Alexandra herself gathered in our dining room. The same place I'd served them brisket a few days prior. The tension in the air felt like a thundercloud about to break. I could practically taste the electricity. Alexandra was jittery, glancing at her phone, probably texting Dominic about how she was going to wrap up this emergency quickly. They all settled around the table. Elijah, in particular, looked eager to see me squirm. "So, James," he drawled, "tell us about your predicament. Financial issues, I'm guessing?" I stood, raising a glass of wine. "Before we get into that," I said, my voice calm, "I want to propose a toast to family, loyalty, and finally seeing things clearly." They looked puzzled. Alexandra forced a laugh, trying to mask her tension. I could see sweat at her temples, though. She urged me, "Go ahead, honey, tell them about the client crisis." "Right." I took out my tablet, connecting it to our TV. "The problem isn't with my business, actually. It's my marriage." Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. She whispered, "James, what are you doing?" I tapped the screen. A recording began to play. Alexandra and Thomas chatting outside my garage the other night. Their voices as clear as day, discussing divorcing me before I got wind of it, referencing half my business. Thomas's face turned ashen. His wife stared at him in disbelief. Elijah's mouth clamped shut and Pamela looked aghast. Magnolia dropped her gaze, already knowing the truth. Alexandra's eyes darted to the TV, then to me. That's not what it sounds like." I didn't let her finish. I flipped to screenshots of her texts with Dominic, the explicit ones carefully redacted but still incriminating. 6 months, I said. 6 months of an affair while I worked overtime. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? Elijah tried to interrupt. "James, if you're going to throw baseless, you want baseless. Here's some basis," I said, swiping to a spreadsheet that listed every single expense I covered for Alexandra's law school. I paid all this for her, built my company from scratch to support her dreams. Meanwhile, she's been draining our accounts. I displayed screenshots of the secret account and the canceled HELOC. She tried to get a home equity line of credit, too. "Dad, did you know about that?" Elijah's face darkened. "We have resources, James. You don't understand what you're dealing with." "No, Elijah, you don't understand what you're dealing with. I may work with my hands, but I'm not stupid." I tapped the tablet again. Here's one final clip. The next footage was from the home office, audio only, capturing Alexandra giggling with Dominic about how clueless I was. Thomas leapt to his feet first, chair screeching behind him. He tried to play it off. "Alexandra, you said you had everything under control. What is this?" Alexandra stood frozen, lips parted, her mascara already smudging under her eyes. "James, I was lonely. You were always gone, buried in your work. We grew apart." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "Grew apart? That's your line? That's what you go with after 7 years? You grew apart while you were on your knees barking for another man?" Her mouth opened and shut like a fish gasping on dry land. Pamela made a choking sound. Excuse me? Don't look so surprised, I said, staring Alexandra down. I saw the video. Every humiliating, degrading second of it, you crawling across motel carpet in fishnets, wearing a collar, barking? And for what? A man who dumped you like yesterday's trash? You son of a... Elijah barked, stepping between us. That was private. You had no right. Oh, I had every right, I said, voice steady as steel. In my house, on my devices. After everything she's done, I had the right to know who I was really married to. Alexandra trembled. James, please. I didn't mean for you to see that. But you meant to record it, didn't you? I snapped. You kept it, titled it like some creepy trophy. What was that about? A keepsake in case the divorce didn't go through? Thomas's wife finally spoke up, voice icy. You knew about this? She said to her husband, backing away. It wasn't what it looks like, Thomas said, flustered. Then what was it, Thomas? She shouted. You and your sister scheming together, lying to everyone? Are you proud of this? Pamela reached for Alexandra. Sweetheart, tell me this isn't true. Alexandra looked like she might collapse. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. No, I said flatly. It was supposed to happen behind closed doors, in courtrooms where you'd paint me as the villain while you walked away with half of everything I bled for. You and your dog collar. Elijah puffed out his chest. You bastard. You're humiliating her. I stepped toward him, inching into his space. She humiliated herself. She sold herself out like a show poodle for a man who didn't even stick around. That's not my doing. Alexandra's voice cracked. Dominic said he loved me. I blinked at her. And now he says he loves his wife again. Because that's what you traded everything for. A guy who liked the sound of you barking more than he liked the idea of being with you in public. She shrank, lips quivering. Pamela was crying now, silently. Magnolia sat still, watching like someone in the front row of a car crash. Elijah turned, furious. We're leaving. You've made your point. We'll deal with this in court. My daughter made a mistake. She doesn't deserve this kind of abuse. You call this abuse? I pointed to the screen, still frozen on a paused frame of Alexandra crawling on all fours. That's abuse. Not from me, from herself. And you enabled every second of it. Standing here now, defending it. Go on, Elijah, file your lawsuit. Just remember, everything you say I'll counter with facts, with footage, with names, with bank records. Alexandra looked like she might faint. This is disgusting, Pamela whispered. Yeah, I said. That's the first true thing anyone from your family has said tonight. Elijah took a step toward me, fists clenched. You think you're tough? You think you win because you embarrassed us? I didn't win anything, I said. I survived you people. He lunged. This time I didn't move. I let him get in close, just long enough for his hand to graze my shoulder before I slapped him. A hard, deliberate, open hand smack across the face. He stumbled back into a chair, gasping, stunned. Pamela screamed. Magnolia flinched. Alexandra covered her mouth, eyes wide. I should call the cops, I muttered. But I'm feeling generous tonight. One chance, all of you out. Thomas dragged his dad to his feet, muttering curses. Pamela grabbed the bags. Magnolia rose quietly. As they turned to leave, Alexandra stood there crying. Where are you going to go? She whispered. I grabbed my overnight bag from the corner. Already got a hotel. I'll come back for the rest of my things tomorrow. When you're gone. You planned this? She asked. I nodded. I learned from the best, didn't I? Then I walked out, ignoring her shouting, You'll regret this! My father wasn't bluffing about lawyers. I spent that night in a hotel, sleeping deeper than I thought possible after such a confrontation. I woke in the morning, secured a small apartment near my workshop, and moved out. I took my essentials, clothes, tools, pictures, my dog's bed, and toys. The dog seemed relieved. It's amazing how animals sense tension. Days passed. I kept my phone off for a while, needing space. When I finally turned it on, I had 47 messages from Alexandra, each more desperate than the last. The first were angry. How dare you humiliate me? Then the tone shifted to pleading. I'll do therapy. I'll cut off my family. Just talk to me. By the final message, she was in utter despair. Dominic had ended things, apparently deciding to try and salvage his own marriage. She was alone. She even wrote, I have nobody now. I felt, not happiness, exactly. A grim satisfaction, maybe. But mostly I felt tired, like finishing a job for a client who would never appreciate the work you put in. I responded only once, telling her I'd already sent the divorce papers, and she should direct any future contact through my lawyer. Then, I blocked her. Then, out of the blue, I was going through some files on a backup drive, ones I'd taken from her laptop, and I found something that made me literally gag. It was a video file labeled with a random string of numbers. No title, no description. I clicked it out of curiosity, expecting maybe more evidence of financial scheming. Instead, the screen flickered to life in grainy hotel room lighting, and there she was, Alexandra. On all fours, knees pressed into ugly beige carpet, dressed in nothing but a black collar around her neck and some kind of mesh lingerie. Her hair was tousled, makeup smudged like it had been hastily applied and forgotten. She wasn't crying. She wasn't forced. She was smiling. She looked up at someone behind the camera, Dominic. I'd bet every dollar left in my account, and said in a voice I hadn't heard from her in years, "Do you want me to beg?" The man's voice, deep and mocking, said, "No, I want you to bark." She laughed, bit her lip, and barked. Once, twice. Then she dropped her jaw, panting, eyes locked on the camera like some twisted parody of obedience. I hit pause. A cold sweat coated my neck. My hands trembled over the trackpad. I didn't want to watch more, but I had to. Some sick part of me needed the confirmation. I hit play. Dominic snickered. "Good girl, now crawl!" And she did. Across the carpet, dragging herself forward like a pet. Heels kicked off behind her, her rear swaying deliberately. "You're such a good master," she whispered at one point before letting out another soft bark. I slammed the laptop shut, stood up so quickly the chair screeched across the floor behind me. I was shaking, mouth dry, nausea rolling through my gut like waves during a storm. My temples pounded, fingers twitching as if they didn't know what to do with themselves. I went to the sink and splashed cold water on my face, gripping the edges of the counter just to steady my breathing. She had called me boring, had said we were growing apart. Meanwhile, she was crawling across cheap motel carpet, panting on command. A laugh broke from my throat, short and sick. A single, barking sound. I wasn't even sure if it was a laugh or a sob. I went back to the laptop, opened the file again, forced myself to watch the whole thing from start to finish. 8 minutes and 42 seconds. Alexandra on her knees, Dominic directing her like some twisted theater director. Her obeying like it was the highlight of her life. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't punch anything. I just watched. And when it was over, I sat there in the silence, wondering how many times she had done this, how many hotel rooms, how many callers, how many lies. I thought of every time she rolled her eyes when I left Boots near the door, every sigh when I asked if she wanted to go out to dinner, every condescending smile she gave when I explained something about my business, like she was too polite to say it, but too proud to hide it. And this was what she turned into when I wasn't looking. No wonder she treated me like a fool at home. I tried to push that out of my mind, focusing on rebuilding. I kept working, signing new clients, living alone in my modest apartment. My dog was my companion, quietly bearing witness to my gloom. Magnolia texted me occasionally, telling me Elijah was in a rage, threatening lawsuits. Dominic apparently ghosted Alexandra, leaving her frantic. At one point, Magnolia wrote that Pamela was urging Alexandra to move back in with them, but Elijah was so furious about the scandal that he wanted her to fix it somehow. Who knows? Weeks went by. My lawyer, Mike, told me that everything was proceeding. Alexandra was apparently waffling on whether to fight for half my business or sign an uncontested divorce. Then, out of the blue, he got a call from Dominic's wife, Rachel, who compared notes on all the shady dealings Dominic and Alexandra had engaged in. That gave me more ammunition in the divorce negotiations. I thought I was nearing closure. Then, one evening, when the sky was streaked pink and orange and I was just finishing dinner, there was a loud knock at my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and nearly choked. There stood Alexandra, with her father Elijah looming behind her, arms crossed, and her mother Pamela carrying a suitcase. Alexandra had 2 suitcases of her own. Her eyes were puffy, face pale. She looked less put together, hair limp and clothes loose. She knocked again, a hollow urgency in her expression. My pulse kicked up in annoyance. I opened the door but didn't move aside to let them in. "James!" Elijah barked, as though I owed them a welcome. "We need to talk." I fixed them with a cold stare. "And who said you could just show up here?" Pamela sniffed, as if the hallway of my apartment complex smelled foul. "We're here to resolve the matter of your marriage." I couldn't help but laugh. "Marriage? Pretty sure I filed those papers weeks ago. Get a lawyer if you have something to say." Elijah's face contorted. He glanced at Alexandra, who looked down at her feet. Finally, she raised her gaze, tears brimming. I, I'm pregnant, James, she whispered. That moment felt like the floor dropped out from under me. My lips parted, but no words emerged at first. I stared at her belly. She didn't look pregnant. Maybe it was too early. Maybe she was lying. Or maybe she was telling the truth, but the baby was Dominic's. Pamela inserted herself. It's your responsibility to take care of her. You're still legally married, and my daughter is carrying your child. Finally, I found my voice. It was shaky, but threaded with anger. Are you kidding me? You want me to believe that's my kid? She's been with Dominic for half a year. Watch your mouth, Elijah snarled, stepping forward. A real man stands by his wife. I always knew you were no real man, just a petty con artist in a hard hat. I let out a sharp bark of laughter. You want me to stand by her after what she did? After I literally found a video of her on all fours wearing a collar for Dominic, barking like a... Alexandra choked on a gasp, face turning red. She shot a mortified glance at her parents, but Elijah exploded. How dare you speak that way? That was a mistake she made out of confusion. You call it confusion? I call it being a cheat. She's got some nerve to show up here demanding I take responsibility for a baby she probably conceived with another man. Elijah's fist clenched. Shut your filthy mouth! He lunged toward me, slamming his open palm into my chest. I stumbled back a step, but kept my footing. He started swinging wildly, shouting, You humiliated her! You humiliated my family! I let him get close enough that his face contorted in pure rage. And then, in one swift motion, I slapped him across the face. It was a solid hit. The crack of impact echoed in the narrow hallway. Elijah's eyes went wide, and he staggered backward, colliding with the suitcase Pamela was holding. He collapsed onto the floor, dazed, one hand braced against the carpet. Pamela shrieked, Elijah, oh my God! She crouched to help him. Alexandra stood there, mouth open, tears running down her cheeks. I exhaled a shaky breath. I'm done, I snarled. I pulled out my phone. All of you are trespassing on my property. I'm calling the cops right now. You can't do that, Pamela hissed. We're your family. I dialed 911, heart pounding. Yeah, I said into the phone. I have trespassers who attacked me. Please send officers. I gave them my address. The operator's voice was calm, asking if there were weapons. I said no, just an assault. Alexandra stared at me in shock. Elijah tried to get up, leaning on Pamela, rage burning in his eyes, but he didn't try to come at me again. I could hear the dispatcher's voice faintly. Units have been dispatched. I hung up. A heavy silence pressed in, broken only by Alexandra's ragged sobs. Her father glowered at me from the floor, his chest heaving. You'll regret this, he spat, more of a broken rasp than a roar now. I glared right back. My face felt hot, my body shaking from adrenaline. No, I said quietly, letting the venom seep into my tone. You regret coming here thinking I'd fall for this charade. The baby is not my problem. Not until there's a DNA test. Now get out. They didn't move. Alexandra's lips trembled. James, please, I pointed at the door again, stepping back inside my apartment and letting it slam behind me. Through the peephole, I saw them remain in the hallway, father rubbing his reddened cheek, mother glaring at my closed door. Alexandra bent over her suitcases with tears in her eyes. Sirens wailed in the distance. I could practically feel the tension radiating from them. They knew the cops would be here soon, and so they scooped up their luggage and hurried toward the elevator. Elijah limping, Pamela whispering frantic admonitions. Alexandra lingered for a split second, gave one tearful, helpless glance at my door, then followed them. The tears in her eyes did nothing to stir compassion in me. And that's where I am now, where the story for the moment ends. Standing in my apartment, fists clenched, adrenaline pumping, waiting for the police to arrive and file a report about trespassing and assault. My father-in-law on the floor, my wife sobbing, claiming she's pregnant, demanding I take her back. The final storm of a marriage that was rotted from within. Maybe I'm the villain for letting my rage bubble over and humiliating them in return. Maybe she's the villain for orchestrating a divorce scheme and an affair. Truth is, in a situation this messed up, we might all be villains, but one thing's certain, I'm not going to be their victim ever again.